couldn't really think of what I wanted to specialize in. And so I kept asking myself, what do you really love? What do you really love? And I realized it went back from before I started acupuncture school. I studied with an herbalist and I completely fell in love with the herbs.
Hi, I'm Michael Max, and this is Qiological, the podcast that connects the voices of our Chinese medicine to ourselves. Hey, it seems to me that this work we have, this job we have of helping others with their health, with healing, it's a curious thing. It's even stranger work. Honestly, I thought by this point, I'd understand a lot more than I do, but it seems that any understanding that I gain is accompanied by more questions. Hopefully, better, more interesting questions. And here's a question I hear from my patients. You might hear this from your patients as well. You walk into the room and there's a deeper sense of stillness. Then, as the patient begins to reorient to the outer world, they ask, "What did you do?" But usually I think what they really mean is, "What just happened inside of me?" And they think we made it happen. Increasingly, though, I don't think it has so much to do with us as it has to do with them. But more about this in a minute. It seems to me that one of the fundamental differences between conventional medicine and East Asian medicine is that conventional medicine has a deep distrust of the body. This might in part stem from Western culture's deep bias toward viewing the body as flawed, born in sin, and somehow ever in need of redemption. Modern medicine, it looks to find the problem and then fix it. Or better yet, for the bottom line, control the bothersome symptoms with a daily dose of something. We've been taught to see the body as undependable and see it as broken, that something from the inside is needed to set it right on the inside. But the East Asian medicine that we practice, it sees it differently. We see the zheng, the upright, as well as the xie, the pathogenic, and we know from our practice that attending to what is right can in turn take care of what is not. And in particular with acupuncture, other than needles, we put nothing into the body. Which brings me back to the comments from patients when they ask, "What did you put on those needles?" Or, "I've not felt like this in years. How long will it last?" They're inquiring from a paradigm that places the locus of healing outside of themselves. They think that only something from the outside can fix the inside, that it's the doctor or the practitioner that's making the change happen. And while our presence is part of the equation, it really is something that is reawakened within the patient, that brings the deep calm of coherence in the healing that unfolds from a connection to this deep, deep sense of embodiment. I am often asked, how long will I feel like this? And I used to answer, well, I don't know, as I thought it was something that I was doing with the acupuncture. And if I could do it better, or if I could do it more frequently, it would be more helpful. But these days, I tell my patients, I don't know how long this will last. And it really doesn't matter, because what they're feeling is something that arises from within them. The acupuncture can bring it out. But if it wasn't already inside of them in some way, even though it's laying latent or dormant, then they would not be feeling it the way that they do at this moment in time. That reframe of the potential for well-being being located inside of them is a surprising revelation for many. That they have access to those internal states, that they themselves can shift their physiology and their psychoemotive state is completely foreign to those who have watched countless hours of advertisements that offer well-being in a chemical package. Or that a change in their state of health comes not from a practitioner, but actually from their own internal resources. Now, us practitioners being human, we want to feel like our treatments make a difference in our patients' lives. And we are indeed part of that process. Our presence is required. Our attention to details that can invite latent aspects of our patients to come forth It's essential to the process. But the actual healing, this, I suspect, our patients get the credit for that. You know, it's a funny job we have, this air quotes, this doing that we bring so much attention, study, and care to. And yet, in the end, it's our patients that do the work. And I suspect that if we do our work really well, our patients may not even remember they had a problem. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. All the sponsors here provide helpful products or services that you'll find beneficial in your clinical work. Want to get better at treating concussions and other neurological conditions? Clayton Shu has some innovative methods. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. Later in the show, Jane offers you helpful suggestions on how to raise your rates, and Golden Flower Chinese Herbs shares a journey of healing that I think you'll recognize. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Geological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more. Ever found yourself listening to a geological conversation and thinking, wow, I needed to hear that? Yeah, me too. And I never know when I'm going to hear a guest say something that stops my world and reboots it with a larger perspective. If these conversations have ever helped you to feel more grounded, more inspired, or just less alone in this strange and wonderful work we do, consider becoming a member or supporting the podcast with a bit of tithing to the donation jar. It helps keep the lights on here at the Geological Sound and Motion Lab so that we can bring you these conversations every Tuesday morning. You'll find all the details at geological.com. Thanks for listening and for being a part of this.
Hey there, I'm Cameron Jafari, an acupuncturist from Los Angeles. So I started learning nanopuncture from Dr. Clayton Shu because I was facing these complex neurological conditions like stroke and MS in my clinic, and I just felt like I lacked a solid process to treat them. Brain-related issues always felt like a whole different animal, and I was looking for a clinical system that worked and could guide me through them. So after attending my first nanopuncture seminar, I was able to apply the process pretty quickly and with pretty amazing results. I remember the first stroke patient I saw afterwards was a guy who had a stroke 2 years back, and he couldn't talk at all. And after a few treatments, he started saying a few words. And a few treatments after that, he could actually have conversations. It was pretty incredible. So this is why I feel like nanopuncture is the future of acupuncture neurology. And you can be a part of that. Their next seminar is on treating concussions and is being co-taught by both Dr. Shu and Dr. Ayla Wolf in New York City on April 26th and 27th. To learn more, visit nanopunctureseminars.com.
Hey friends, welcome back to Geological. My guest today is a longtime acupuncturist from the New York area. She really loves herbal medicine. So much so that she basically started a conference that specifically focuses on some of the older currents of herbology. Being a bit of an herb geek myself, I am really looking forward to this conversation with Sally Rappeport. Sally, welcome to Geological.
Thank you so much.
Nice to have you here.
Yes, it's great to be here.
You're a busy acupuncturist, right? I mean, you got a busy life.
Yes.
Why bother doing a conference? I mean, isn't that kind of a bunch of hassle and trouble and sleepless nights? What inspired you to do this? Tell us about what you're up to.
I really never was the person to take something like this on. I really loved having my little practice in Brooklyn, and I was very happy just being that way. I think what I realized over time, working by myself, one feels somewhat isolated. So I think that was part of it. Also, I had brunch with Jean Goblet, who runs the High Falls Foundation, which is involved with growing Chinese herbs sustainably in the United States. I was saying, we really need to have a conference. We really need to get herbalists together to find out more about what you're doing and to be communicating more. And initially, I was going to totally focus it on people who were really looking at the classics. But then I saw something about the more of the conflict between some TCM people and people who are teaching or working with classical herbal formulas. I decided that that was a bad idea, that I wanted to bring people together. I didn't want to divide the community. And I felt like that was very important. I got this idea and I started reaching out to people. Do you think this is a good idea? And I got positive feedback 100%. It was just kind of amazing to me. And it took off from there.
I mean, in some ways, I started the podcast for the same reason. I felt pretty isolated. I mean, I love my practice, but I was feeling isolated. So you're looking around and going, well, what we really need is some kind of a conference like this. Someone should do that. Oh, maybe it's me.
Right, exactly. I reached out to people. I did one of those survey monkeys to a whole bunch of people I knew and in the community around the country, and I got really good feedback. And then I was speaking further with a few people, and they were like, you should really start an organization. There's no organization for people who are focused on herbs. And I just said, but what about this group? And what about that group? And when I did the research, I realized that there's a couple of herb committees that are part of the national acupuncture organizations, but they have no mandate to communicate with practitioners. There's the American Herbal Products Association, which is more commercial, it's the distributors. They have a Chinese herb committee, but we really are not well represented in a professional capacity. And so there really is a need for a group like the Shen Society. And then again, it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to try to do this, but I am.
Sort of like Luke Skywalker, right? No, not me. Oh, yes, you.
Kind of, yes. But I do have amazing help. Caroline Radice, who's an incredible teacher and practitioner in New York, has been my right hand person. She's incredible. And Marnie Ergil, who also practices upstate, has joined us. So the three of us are really doing this. And truthfully, I've organized events before. It's a lot of work, but there's a bunch of tasks, and you just make your list and you check them off and you get it done.
So really what we've got here, not just a conference, but an organization behind it. Tell us more about Shen Nong and why herbalists should know about you. I mean, what is it that you've got to offer here that the other organizations don't have? Sounds like you found a very specific niche for yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really for us as a community of East Asian herbal medicine practitioners. Mostly right now, we focused on the conference. I hope at some point to be more involved in some of the work that APA has done in terms of like the white paper on dispensary guidelines that just came out over the last couple of years.
Who's APA?
It's the American Herbal Products Association.
Got it.
So mostly that is made up of distributors of herbal products. APA itself has a Chinese herb committee that Bill Egloff, who runs Crane Herbs, is the chair of that committee. he and several people, some of whom are practitioners, came up with these guidelines that came out of FDA rulings from a decade ago that basically state loosely that we should be moderating ourselves as a profession in terms of the safety of what we're doing.
Sort of self-policing. You guys look after your own.
Exactly. And I think if there would be adverse events, then maybe they would take over more if we weren't taking care of things ourselves. They took this on because there's not exactly anyone else to take it on. As a professional organization, we would be more involved in the next steps. I mean, that was kind of a 10-year process, and we came on at the end of it. We've distributed the guidelines through our website, but those are the kinds of things that we should be doing ourselves as a profession. And what's happening with that recently, the NCCAOM has established a new competency for that go along with these guidelines. So there will be a certificate that you can get eventually after taking a course through the NCCAOM. I could tell you all this kind of bureaucratic stuff. That's not my love. My love is classical herbs.
Now, the bureaucratic stuff, it sounds like you've got information about it. You've got the guidelines. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's information on the Shen Nong website. If people want that, go to the website. We'll put the information in the show notes page. They can go get it.
That's what we're trying to be in part, exactly, is a place where people can go to get information. And it's just that's kind of starting to happen. People are sending me queries when they don't know about something and they want to get an answer. Maybe Sally knows, because of Shenong. And I really appreciate being able to be that person. I think it's really important for us professionally. There's so many issues, herb quality issues, safety issues, all kinds of things that we need to take more responsibility for professionally.
So I'm hearing two things. One is you're really working on the nuts and bolts, just the everyday things that we need to pay attention to as practitioners, as business people, as professionals. Because if we don't pay attention to it and something bad happens, then something bad is going to happen to all of us. So it sounds like you're taking care of that piece. At the same time, you're so deeply in love with the medicine, you're looking to enhance that piece and help with education around those issues.
Exactly. So, in terms of that, that's really more the focus of the conference and bringing people in that may not be as well known. Some people are really well known, but the new practitioners coming up may have not had an opportunity to study with them. This coming conference, we're going to have Dr. Yu will be there and Arnaud Versley. So I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Yu's book, A Walk Along the River, that just came out this past year.
Quite familiar with it. I think it's episode 3 of Geological. In the original launch, I had a nice conversation with Michael Fitzgerald, one of the translators of that fantastic, fun, and interesting book. I don't know about you. I mean, I really love reading Chinese medicine, but sometimes it's dry and boring as hell. I mean, it's interesting, but it's dry.
Yes.
Not that book.
No, the book is so it's revelatory, and it is just such a treat to read and have so many nuggets of wonderful information.
What are some of your favorite parts from that book? Is there anything in particular that stands out to you that you find yourself using in practice?
I have used, he talks about for chronic lung conditions using large dosages of Zawan and Shien Herzal. Now, I never would have thought of using Shien Herzal for lung conditions.
I never knew about that herb until I read it.
Oh, okay. Well, I knew it as a stop bleeding herb. I've used it for like menopausal bleeding a lot. But for lung, I never would have used it that way, and I've used it with a few people, and it seems the combination seems to be really helpful.
Yeah, I think I need to go back and reread it. Not just for the specifics of what to use, but because there's these three doctors, right? There's doctor like, A, B, and C. They're sort of, I mean, they're practitioners, but they're also students of his. And so he'll explain something, and then one of the docs will have a question, and there's like the really smart doc, and there's the clever doc, and there's the kind of, not so bright doc, kind of like me. And it's great because it's the kind of questions that we would be asking had we been sitting
Exactly.
in there, right?
Yes, it's so fantastic, how he's able to, just then take off on this explanation that clarifies so many ideas from the classics, from his experience. And he has these just little nuanced experiential formulas that are based on the classics that are really, really helpful, I think. So he's incredibly clinically experienced in this way that's so useful for people in the West, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah. People in China too, for that matter.
Right. And he will also teach in New York a 1 day class. The conference is on Saturday, and then he'll teach an all day class on Sunday.
So, I mean, you probably have your super secret ways of doing things. If you can't tell the tale without people having to be silenced, how did you manage to get that cat to come to the United States?
All right. Well, it was through Michael Fitzgerald, and I have a key partner, lovely, wonderful partner, Sharon Weisenbaum.
Hmm.
So I'm sure you know her work as well. She likes to bring people up to White Pine Institute in Massachusetts, and she asked, I think we had invited Sharon, the Shen Society invited Sharon to do a review of the book. So we have her review posted on the website also. And then she asked, would we be interested in having him come to the conference? And so she was the one that actually contacted Michael first, but we've been negotiating, or we worked things out with through Michael with Dr. Yu, and it's been lovely. So it's all a little family, I guess. A lovely family.
Yeah, absolutely. This is sort of how things get done. Will he be doing any other clinical classes or doing any other teaching while he's here in the States? I mean, it seems like a long way to go for just a couple of classes.
Yes, he's going to be. So he'll be at our conference, then he'll do an all day class the following day, and then he's going up to Amherst for a 3 day class at White Pine. We haven't completely firmed up the topics yet, but I think for the conference, he's going to talk about Wumewan.
Ah, great.
Yes. And for the 1 day class, I believe he's going to be talking about ministerial fire, both clinically and theoretically. So I'm really excited about that. Up in Massachusetts, I think he's going to be talking about his 10 like most used 10 favorite formulas, as well as a couple of other things.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that I use to keep my practice running smoothly. So, let's talk about something that can be a little bit uncomfortable: raising your fees. I know, this is something that might feel awkward, but it doesn't have to. With a bit of planning and care, you can handle it in a way that feels right for you and your patients. One tip: give yourself at least 2 months to prepare. This gives you time to get comfortable with the change and let your patients know what's happening. You can share the news through emails, booking reminders, or even just a friendly little sign in your clinic, and avoid over-apologizing. Instead, keep it straightforward and matter of fact. Keeping things consistent across the ways that you communicate can really help avoid confusion. Fee increases aren't always easy, but you're not on your own here. For more tips and ideas on how to communicate these changes with confidence, check out frontdesk.chain.app and look for the article, How to Tell Your Clients You're Raising Your Fees. Oh, and one last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, use the code CHIOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. Sounds like if you really want to get some of Dr. Yu, then take a week off and go visit the East Coast.
We will live stream everything.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Maybe we could
So
podcast some of it too.
that would be fantastic.
Yeah. Actually, I'd love to get him on for a podcast interview.
Oh, that could be amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I had Dr. Huang on a couple of weeks ago. I was in Nanjing recently and we did a show. And as I was editing it, I realized, holy smokes, I've actually got two shows here. I've got one that we can edit in English for the English speakers, and one that I can edit down into Chinese for our Chinese friends.
That's fantastic.
When is this whole shindig happening?
So the Shen conference is March 9th, 2019. Dr. Yu's class in New York will be March 10th. And then the following weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he will be up in Amherst.
So which Shen conference is this? How many have you done so far?
Will be the third one.
Number 3.
Yeah. So last year, Craig Mitchell spoke and Kara Frank.
Was Sabina there?
Yeah, Sabine, of course. Sabine
Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious to know what some of your other favorite resources are for learning herbal medicine and for taking your knowledge and taking it deeper.
I'm not a translator. I don't have that talent like you do. So I am using translations, and I definitely like to open all my books on my table and study between translations. Also, do that to prep for teaching and that kind of thing. I tend to go back to the translations of the Shanghanlun, the Jingui Yalwei, and there are a few main translations of those books that I use. I also use case studies when I can. The other thing about Dr. Yu is they're supposed to come out with a second volume.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know about that? I wasn't sure.
I have I've heard that. Yes.
Yes, so I'm very excited. That's supposed to come out before the conference. I hope that it does. Besides that, online, I like the translations like the Chinese Medicine Database. They do great work.
Are there any groups that you find yourself participating in that you find to be helpful?
Yes, I've studied a lot with Dr. Feng Shilin and Suzanne Robidoux. So I do participate a little bit in the Feng Shilin Facebook group. You know, they're really interesting cases people present, and I like delving into those really complex cases because that's what we see in clinic that we have to deal with every day.
So true. On occasion, someone comes in and they look really textbook, and I always have to check myself. It's like, am I lazy here? Am I missing something? How could they look exactly like Buzhong Ichitang? How often do you see that?
Right, exactly. And so you check in with all those different resources to try to find new uses for those formulas that you hadn't thought about before and all those kinds of things.
So the Feng Lun stuff is really interesting. I read a little bit of his teacher's work, Dr. Hu Shu. They've just got a whole different sort of stance and glimpse into the 6 confirmations and into how you use herbs and how illnesses can sort of straddle different levels. Can you give us, 35,000 foot view of the Feng Lun perspective and how it differs from, say, your basic TCM?
It's vastly different from TCM. It's really focusing only on the 6 levels, really 6 confirmations. I don't like to call them levels. It's about seeing, and it's about knowing the text, knowing the Shanghanlun text. You're really seeing what the symptoms are. And because they have Dr. Feng Shilin looks at everything with these very, very clear parameters, every kind of symptom can be placed into one of the confirmations. And they're paired. So you have Taiyang paired with Shaoyin. And the half exterior, half interior is Shaoyang and Yin. And the interiors is Yang Ming and Tai Yin. And so you can have a 3-yin pattern with Xiaoyang or a 3-yin pattern with Yang Ming. But the symptoms are so specific. Anytime when you have heat with a patient with heat, with sweating, with insomnia, there's going to be some kind of Yang Ming component there, most likely. Now, sometimes it's tricky, and that could be Shui Yin pattern because you're having heat above if there's cold below. I also kind of bring in a lot of what Sharon Weisenbaum talks about in terms of Shui Yin with being about cold blood. And Shui Yin patterns are very, very much about the blood. And Dr. Feng Shulen does that a little bit, but not as much as Sharon Weisenbaum. So I find that incredibly helpful. And one of the other things that's very specific, I think, to the Feng Shulen kind of method, this type of Jingfang practice, is that anytime there's joint pain, you have to decide whether it's always exterior, and it's either Tai Yang or Xiao Yin.
That's it, always exterior. This is one of the things that I really enjoy about this system because it takes the way that I used to think about herbs and gives it kind of a twist. Because originally I thought about tie-in as it's a pretty inside phase, but it's actually the outside of the inside.
Exactly.
Whereas Taiyang is the outside of the outside. And so just thinking about something like, I'm sorry, Shaoyin.
Oh, Xiao Yin, yes. Okay.
Shaoyin is the outside. Because I was thinking Taiyin, Taiyang, but it's not Taiyin, Taiyang. It's
No,
Taiyang,
Xiao
Shaoyin.
Yin.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, it's a little bit of a weird mind bubble for me. The outside of the inside. I mean, what the heck does that mean? Well, it sounds like one of the things it means in this case is if you're dealing with something like joint pain, these are exterior issues. Is it the very outside or the inside of the outside?
Exactly.
What would those formulas look like? How would they differ?
If you have like neck pain, for instance, and chills and fever, or chills and sweating, you might be using Guizhi Jia Gurgentang. If there's no chills, but the person tends to like chills in terms of like when you put on a blanket, you don't get warm. So it's very clearly an exterior pattern. Someone was like a patient walks in and they have a new neck pain, and you say, "Were you in an air conditioning draft?" And then it's pretty obvious. It's a Guggenton kind of pattern. If they're sweating, then it's a Guizhi Guggenton kind of pattern. On the other hand, if they have a more chronic neck pain, then it's very likely going to be more of a Shaoyin pattern, and you might use something like Guizhi Jia Fuzatang for the, and you might add some Qianghua or some Gegen, depending on other factors, to the formula. That's how I would use it.
It sounds like if it's more of a Taiyang pattern, you're going to see some symptomology that's a little bit like the common cold. There might be some chills, there's some sensitivity to wind, along with the pain. Whereas if you've got this more interior cold, you're not going to see the external symptoms of cold, like the chills, but you're going to have more of like a deep cold. Whereas with the Taiyang pattern, you're going to probably use more diaphoretic herbs. With the Shaoyin pattern, you are going to want to use more of the Fuzi Rogui, maybe some Xixin. You want to warm the interior.
Yeah. I'm not so sure I would use Rogui in that case, but certainly Fuzi, possibly Shishin. To some extent, the issues can be more chronic, but you could possibly have an Taiyang condition that someone's had for years. Occasionally, I've seen that clinically. I'm sure you have too, that they've just carried these symptoms for years and years and years, but it really hasn't gone deeper.
This is such an interesting thing because I'm thinking back to my basic training. It's like, oh, well, it's high yang issue. Well, that should resolve pretty quickly. The idea of having something stuck in the exterior for a long period of time, it just makes you think about things a little bit differently. Often we think about lurking pathogens, we think of them being deep inside the body, but they might actually not be that deep.
They might not. I don't think so much in terms of the lurking pathogens because if you're looking at the Shanghanlun and the six conformations, it's not about pathogens. Pathogens is a concept that came much later. And my view is that pathogen really is a Western medical concept. It's not Chinese medicine. So there's no real pathogens that we're seeing here. We're seeing how the body is presenting. Yin is heat above and cold below. It's not about lurking pathogens.
So let me ask you this, just to be devil's advocate. So something like xie qi, roughly translated as evil qi, how does that fit in?
The six evils or the Shi, those are how the body is responding to the environment. So you have the environment, you have heat. Is your body able to handle that or not? Does it allow the heat to create a response is that response a difficult response or is it a smooth response?
So it's not about something coming in and being evil. It's about the body not being able to adjust to a certain
Exactly.
influence. It's about the body's response.
Yes. So it's really interesting for me right now. I'm studying with Edward Neal, who is more an aging acupuncture person. And the Feng stuff is completely separates itself from the Neijing. But I feel like the Neijing is also important. And also, I'm an acupuncturist too. So I'm finding it really interesting to try to bring them all together. But the Neijing is, in fact, so clear that this medicine is about the relationship between the heavens and man and the earth, and the interconnections and the ways that these three entities work with each other and respond to one another. The idea of pathogens, the idea of evil qi as being a pathogen, is a westernized concept of Chinese medicine. It's not really Chinese medicine. That's my understanding.
I mean, if we inhabit that particular point of view, we stand in a very, very different universe.
We do. It changes our relationship to the planet and to the universe. There's no question that it's incredibly difficult to wrap your mind around this thinking. You really have to shift your brain from conventional thinking.
How have you, over the years, been able to shift your thinking, which it sounds like actually shifts your perception?
Study, study, study. I never thought that I would be that person, but in fact, I have been that person with the books on my desk all spread out, trying to kind of get these concepts into my brain. And I'm not sure if there's another way to do it because our culture has such a different way of thinking. So to really inhabit this, you have to just keep at it. I wish there was a simple way, but I also think, like, as in the Shenong Society, we're very aware that we're probably going to be attracted to 20 to 30% of the licensed acupuncturists in this country. Everyone is not delving into herbal medicine, and that's okay. Everyone doesn't have to. You have to kind of really commit your life to it if you're going to do it. I'm really happy that that I've been able to create this platform for those 20 to 30% of practitioners to get together.
Well, it sounds like you've sort of been scratching your own itch here. And
I hope that's a good thing.
oh, I think it's a very good thing. I
Yeah,
think it's a really good thing because the questions that are bothersome to us, the things that are challenges to us, they're probably challenges to someone else too. And the great thing about the challenges, well, I think there's a couple ways of dealing with them. Number one is, oh, that looks like a lot of trouble. Maybe I'll just do something else. I'll go study functional medicine. That'll fix that, right?
exactly.
Just
Yeah.
go do something else. Or you come up to it and you go, well, that's too difficult. I'll never understand that. And you give up. Or you do, it sounds like what you're doing, the obstacle becomes the inquiry itself.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating. And it makes so much sense when you look at the world in this way, and that the ancients understood this medicine and understood the world and the dynamics of the world so well. And it has so many applications to our world now. I find it incredibly helpful in my life.
Imagine this: a patient walks into your clinic. They're carrying more than the pain in their body. There's a story there, a history woven with the stress of long days, the ache of things unsaid, and the quiet longing for something to shift. You listen, not just with your ears, but with your hands, your intuition, your heart. It's not just about needles or a formula. It's about connection, understanding the threads that tie us together, mind, body, and spirit. That is where golden flower Chinese herbs comes in. Rooted in tradition and crafted with care, their formulas are more than herbs. They're a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern practice. Every bottle, a quiet partner in your work, helping you to meet your patients where they are. Because healing isn't just about treating symptoms. It's about creating trust, cultivating belonging, and helping someone feel truly seen. Golden Flower Chinese Herbs, your partner in practice and connection, where tradition meets care. You said a few minutes ago, you didn't think you were the kind of person for this. What kind of person did you think you were?
I think I just felt like I was somebody who was not so comfortable in the public sphere and really happy in my little world. I feel like, oh, my little world of my office where I am the ruler. I don't deny that I have some control issues. I'm very happy being my own, in control of my business and how it gets run and all of that. But it was my little sphere and I was very happy there. And I didn't think I was particularly a public persona. It's okay. I have expanded out.
You surprised yourself.
I did. I did.
Well, it's funny. I do this podcast. I'm actually a pretty introverted person. I have a similar sort of thing. It's like, well, holy smokes, what am I doing on this podcast? This is a very public kind of thing.
Yes.
But because I have this introverted tendency, because I also spend time with books and thinking and writing and this and that, it somehow helps to balance the internal work by being able to bring it to the outside a bit and kind of ping it off the universe and see what comes back.
I think that's true. I think that's really, really true. I'm really appreciative of the work that you're doing. I actually did listen to several of your podcasts, but the Feng Sherlin one with the Francis Turner's, that was what lovely. I think that it is good for us to kind of take ourselves out. I also feel like somehow at this point in my life, I'm comfortable in myself enough to be able to do this and feel okay, feel good about it.
How long have you been practicing?
20 years.
Yeah, I'm at a similar landmark.
Yeah.
I suspect after 20 years, it's probably our job to start teaching a little bit.
Right, exactly. And so that's the other aspect is that we need to be stepping up, stepping out. I've organized a lot of small groups, events, that kind of thing, so I kind of know how to do it, and it's really just taking those skills to a bigger level. They don't change, it's all the same thing.
I remember as a kid watching the Ed Sullivan Show. Those of you that are old enough will remember that. You're smiling, you
Absolutely.
remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I loved those guys that would like spin plates on sticks. I don't know why. Maybe it's because the wacky music that went with it. But it's kind of like that, you know. You spin one, you learn to spin two, you learn to spin three. Next thing you know, you got 2 dozen plates on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like you said, you pour over the books, you have changed your thought over the years, learned lots of stuff from your clinic and from your studies and from our colleagues. I'm curious to know what you've changed your mind about concerning Chinese medicine in the past 10 years.
Probably just a little more than 10 years ago, I was very much in the TCM place. And I did that for a good close to 10 years before I kind of realized I wanted to delve deeper. And part of that was motivated by a lot of practitioners in the New York area specializing. And although I had a lot of gynecology in my practice and fertility, I really didn't want to do become another fertility person treating people for IVF. It just that was and has been very big in New York, and it just didn't. Uh,
Didn't turn your crank?
yeah, exactly. It just
Yeah.
didn't grab me. And I couldn't really think of what I wanted to specialize in. And so I kept asking myself, what do you really love? What do you really love? And I realized it went back from before I started acupuncture school. I studied with an herbalist and I completely fell in love with the herbs. I just realized I just wanted to become the best herbalist I could. And even I'm not a scholar and I really,
What are you talking about? You got books all over your desk. What do you mean you're not a scholar?
but I'm
I,
not
I, I
like,
don't I don't think you get to say that.
I'm not in terms of going back and translating and all of that. And so, and
Well, being a translator and being a scholar are two different things.
okay, I realized that I wanted to become the best herbalist that I could, and that would mean that I had to really delve into it and really study. And I started going through the Shanghanlun but line by line. And then Stephen Boyenton, who do you know him?
I have heard the name.
He's wonderful. He's actually in China now getting a PhD. He's quite brilliant. He has since gotten a PhD in Chinese history focused on medicine from Columbia and then went back to China to get a PhD. He put on the PCOM website anyone interested in a study group on the Shanghanlun.
And you jumped in.
So we organized that together. So that I delved much deeper into it with that. We were using a lot of case studies. So that was really huge. I went on to study with Yaron Seidman, and then, which sort of was off on another tangent, but really valuable. And then with Sharon Weisenbaum. But I kind of I went through the Shanghanlun line by line by myself.
I've heard lots of people say you got to know it line by line. I mean, you need to be familiar. You have to have it kind of in the data bank, so to speak. So when you see something, you can go, wait a minute, I think I read something about that. I actually had something like this happen a few months ago. I was going through the Feng Shui book with a friend of mine. We were going through the chapter on Guizhi Tang Jia Guizhi. And there was a little note at the very end of it about this is helpful for improper Qigong practices. And I thought, what? I wonder what that would look like. Well, like that day or the next day, someone comes in with all this energy rushing upwards, and she usually doesn't have this problem. Now she's got all this reflux and she can't sleep and she's agitated. And then she tells me about this new meditative practice that she's doing, where she brings energy from her belly up into her head and shoots it out the top of her head. And I'm going, holy crap. Good thing I read that line.
Wow. Yeah, that would be perfect for that because it's like a running piglet.
It's it, it's a type of running piglet. But
Yes,
again, this one from an improper qigong practice. Yeah, you never know when that these lines might show up and help. You just kind of have to do it. I just want to comment for a second. What you said a moment ago, what sort of set you on the path is you asked the question, what do I really love? That is a deeply powerful, and I think it can also be a deeply troublesome question, because it's a lot easier to ask the question, what can I do to make some money? What can I do to get a practice off the ground? What can I do to be, some kind of successful? What can I do to be accepted? What can I do to be, sort of in the main? I mean, there's all kinds of questions we can ask that can guide our practice in a certain way. But really asking that question, what do I love? And come up with the answer and then be willing to do the work that it takes to get you there. That is not the work of a few months or a few years. I mean, that takes decades.
it is. It's a decades long process for sure. I feel like I'm in the middle of it. I'm not in the beginning anymore, but I'm certainly, it's got to keep going because there's so much I still don't know.
Like you said, you've been at it about 20 years. I've been at it about 20 years too. I thought I would know a whole lot more by now.
Yeah, I
I really did. I thought I'd know a whole lot more. And at the same time, I have learned more than I could have imagined.
I would totally agree. I would just say that also I am that person that I had to do something I loved. I wasn't able to do something for money. It just, for me, that's never going to work. So,
And you've managed to pull it off anyway, huh?
yeah.
Well done. Well, give us a quick rundown here on how people can find the Shen Nong Society, and a little bit about why they'd want to go over and check it out, and how they can find you and find out more information about the upcoming conference.
So, if you go to our website, it's the sheноngsociety.org. We put out a monthly newsletter. You can join the Shenong Society also, but if you just join our mailing list, you will get the newsletter.
And what if we join the society?
That was an issue. We started out being requiring the NCCAOM herb diplomat status in order to become a member, and we got a lot of backlash about that. So we dropped that requirement. We had it in there for a good reason, that we wanted to create a network, for a referral network for people. But so many of our teachers, for various reasons, have dropped their diplomat status, as well as other members, that we decided to drop it at this point. So as a member, you get a discount to our conference, but we've really kind of dropped the referral network because it's one of the complex issues that has not yet been resolved in our community. Since it's not like a specialty board exam. So it's people take their board exams when they're in school to get their diplomat status, but not everyone does it because you don't need it state by state.
Right, it's complex.
It's really complex. So that sort of is an unresolved issue that we have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if people join, they get a discount to the conference. It sounds like they also get the satisfaction of knowing that they're helping to support an organization that's bringing something helpful and unique to the world of Chinese herbalism.
Yes, that's
Good reason to sign up for that.
absolutely. And we did put out some position papers why it's important to keep your diplomat status, because I actually believe that it is important. But it's a complicated issue. We don't have to go into it deeply.
Right. Anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we say goodbye for today?
Keep studying and come to the conference.
Great. Sally, I look forward to seeing you at the conference.
All right. I look forward to meeting you in person there.
All right, friends, that's it for 2018. I hope that you have enjoyed listening to these podcasts as much as I have enjoyed talking to the various guests and bringing them to you. Be sure to tune in next week for the beginning of 2019. I've got a lot of great stuff in store for you next year. January's first show will be a solo podcast. It is going to be me hanging out with y'alls, giving you a roadmap of some things that you can expect in the coming year. Also, I have had a bit of experience, my own clinical experience with the Sa'am acupuncture method that I've been learning from Toby. And I've got a few things that I want to share with you that I think will be helpful in working in your clinic. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.